Yeah, people say I have an interesting career. Interesting in inverted commas normally means, what were you doing? You seem to have hopscotched around a lot, which is strange because I studied as an industrial designer. I went to the Royal College, very luckily, and industrial design has always been about everybody working together to make something. So let's just take this. Is it styling? Is it the technology? Is it the software? Is it the utility? Is it the selling of it? And as an industrial designer, you tend to have the languages of all of those elements. And that gave me a great handle on communicating design and creativity, which is the most fragile of elements, but defending creativity through all of these different layers. And because I was born in exactly the right time when digital was evolving, so my first company when I was 16 was programming games for Commodore 64s and Amigas. And we learned things then when you had to program a game in 64K, which is less than your digital watch, that would last a schoolboy a month of Sundays playing it every day with delight. And so when the internet arrived, years later, a decade later, and they had dial-ups of 12K and 24K dial-ups, we can't do anything on this. And I'm like, we used to create star systems in 64K, and taking something you've learnt from here and transposing it across a boundary suddenly changed what you could do and how you looked at it. So although I studied industrial design, which gave me the language of all things, since then I've gone on to do digital and advertising and branding, and now I feel, only now in my, I could say my real age, which is 41, but in terms of digital ages, which is times 7 dog years, I'm about 250 years old. I'm just getting good at my game, because the game has now evolved so many different parts of it. Digital plus. It's not just a static website. It's not something you move through. It's something that's connected to the e-commerce side or the design side or sharing it socially. And I think at that point, I'm really loving what I'm doing and the time I'm doing it in. My life is very logical, and the clue's normally in the title. So one of my second company was a company called D&AD, and D&AD was all about being obviously dropped in the deep end. There was no digital. We had no idea. You just had to swim or sink. After D&AD went under in 2001, it was such an amazing. It was an amazing collective. It was more than a company, I think, in some people's eyes. And so many great companies started from the death of the parents, and the children then had time to be free and do what really drove them. And myself and 3 other partners from D&AD and 2 other very good friends set up a new company called Poke. And Poke was about, if you're good at something, people want you to do the same thing. If you eat the same food, you get used to it, and personally you stay in a habit. And so we said to ourselves at the beginning, if you catch yourself doing the same work, thinking in the same way, working for the same people, poke the finger at each other. Don't do that again. And it was Poke is an amazing company. And internally, it has an extremely aggressive manner internally to challenge itself, which is why the results are so great. And after 7 years of being at Poke, I felt myself starting to repeat my thinking and repeat my positioning. And if I was true to not only my 5 other partners, but also myself, I couldn't do that anymore. And to do the next step, I needed to consider all of the possibilities. Sometimes you are selling a client a service because it's something you feel or something you know or something that's you're very passionate about, but you're not selling the unknown. So I started a new company called Fray. And Fray was, again, clues in the title, everything I've ever learned, just pulling it all apart and then weaving it around a problem. So the problem is at the heart of my business. And I have 2 or 3 people who look after me, and then I just work with my heroes I phone up a Bob Greenberg, a Richard Seymour, these people who I get paid to listen to. You'd never be able to get them in the same room. The only time they come together is at the D&AD. And Fray's about that. It's just taking the very best and asking truthfully what they would do. We are digital design, so it took 3 days pre-judging, solid, and then we were here for 3 days, and we managed to do it in 2.5. Not because we rushed through it, but because we had an amazing judging team that found consensus very quickly. And that's one thing you find when people click together. There's such an honesty when you judge these D&ADs. You can't bullshit, you can't politicise, you can't grandstand. You leave the room if you're even vaguely attached to it, and it was amazing work to see from X thousand pieces. At the very last moment, when you're just about to talk about the silvers, there's 4 judges in the room that still need to leave. So you know the calibre of the judges around the room have got through this mincing machine that is 0.001% of work get a pencil, and they're still there. That's when you know you've got a good jury. We normally do bad trends. Okay, so bad trends.
Okay, tell me the bad trends.
This is what you shouldn't do. Number 1, mentioning HTML5 in every single sentence on your award scheme. It's not about the technology. I don't need to know what it's about. My mum doesn't care that it's HTML5. If it's mentioned, the 1-page scroll, we saw loads of pages with just single scrolling pages because HTML5 allows you to do single. It became a theme, and you can see too much of it. Apps and installations, we think we need a new category. There's the web, and then apps, whether it be on a phone or an iPad or mobile devices. These are tools. They tend, if they're branded to be powerful rather than let's talk about a beer, an FMCG type client, and they can't be compared. I used to say they need protection in their own category, but actually it's not protection. They need encouragement, and they need encouragement to say this is where you'll be judged fairly and squarely against apples rather than the apples and oranges. And because digital moves so fast, you can never ever keep up with the industry. You're always one step back, but you need to be listening to them. And I think that's a big thing that we found. We need one of those. There's a couple of other things, but they're small. There's some work that I sat down with Rosie Arnold, our president this year, and our 50th year, which is an amazing. She is an amazing person to have as our figurehead, but also to be celebrating on our 50th. I said to her, she had any black pencils, and I was like, no, I don't think so. There's some good work, and I started talking through the work, and because you're surrounded by it, and been surrounded by it for your life, but also for the last 3 days, and once you explain it to somebody, they're like, what, really? You mean this could be the future of retail, or this is the future of Holocaust and action? You're like, oh yeah, it is quite good, isn't it? It's like, what, above anything else? You're like, yeah, it's quite good, isn't it? So you come away, and again, it invigorates you.